I'm Sam from Cultaholic.com, and this is Graded for Friday Night SmackDown, where I take a look at the show segment by segment and award each little bit a grade from A+ to F. Now Fastlane's done, post-Fastlane fallout / gentle WrestleMania setup is done. Now we're entering the firm sell phase of WrestleMania. So SmackDown is fully on the storyline offensive this week. So without any further ado, let's crack on with it. Hit the intro. We kick things off with Edge coming down to the ring, and Edge is like, you know what, maybe last week's big brawl was kind of on the horizon. Maybe it's my fault for not realizing that Bryan is somebody I should have been looking out for. He takes issue with Bryan derailing everything that he's worked for, and he says, you know what, I think I've been a little bit outplayed, but this week I looked in the mirror and finally I liked what I saw. I saw the rated R superstar. He says Bryan doesn't really understand the situation he's put himself in, and he also says that he is somebody that both Bryan and Reigns aspire to be. He was this close to the concerto, and next time he promises that he won't hesitate. And holy balls, what a promo, Edge. Edge has been back a year, but now it feels like he's actually finally returned. He's hurtling toward heeldom, and all he's got to do now is cement it. Oh God, how good is Edge as a heel? Still, it sort of leaves the question as to how fans are going to react at Mania. I'm pretty sure they're going to cheer the ever-loving poop out of him. After this, he's stopped backstage by Kayla, and she asks him why he didn't bother addressing Bryan's street fight tonight against Jey Uso, and he's like, you know, it doesn't really bother me if Bryan doesn't make it to Mania. Next we go to an 8-man tag that pits the Dirty Dogs and Alpha Academy against the Mysterios and the Street Profits. Cole also confirms there's going to be a 4-way tag featuring all of these teams next week on WrestleMania SmackDown. That's right, it's happening. The pre-show is an entire episode of SmackDown. In terms of the match, things immediately break down with each team hitting dives, but Dawkins takes it to Ziggler before Otis gets in and just manhandles him. The heels then trap him, work him over, and Ziggler's just doing such a great job of goading him, letting him get real close to his corner and taking him all the way back. There's a double down followed by a double hot tag with Ford getting in and almost putting Gable away. Ray gets in for a 619, things break down again. Ford and Gable are going back and forth until Otis gets a sneaky tag in, hits the flying bulldozer and picks up the win. Now I'm going to give this one a C. It wasn't really a bad match, and everybody in the match maximized their time in the ring as best they could, but it was definitely more on the setup side of things, and that's going to be a recurring theme on SmackDown this week. Academy picking up the win here didn't really fill me with hope for them getting a big Mania moment either. We then go to Adam Pearce and Sonya backstage, and they're approached by Paul Heyman. Heyman says that Roman wants to make sure that Jey will not be held responsible for whatever happens to Daniel Bryan tonight, and Pearce is like, I had a feeling you were going to come up and ask something like, and as he's talking, Sonya's like, you make a good point, and then there's a little bit of a between them. Next up we go to the ring for the Cesaro Rollins face-off, moderated by Corey Graves. So Graves starts off by trying to talk to Cesaro, but Seth keeps cutting him off and saying you should be talking to me first, and Seth wants to be addressed as Mr. WrestleMania. Cesaro says that Rollins might have a point about some of the things he said about him, but he will not be failing at WrestleMania. Graves asks Rollins about the swings, and he's like, you know what, I'm not going to be shaken by it, and then he starts listing his WrestleMania achievements. Cesaro says that he wouldn't be here if he didn't feel he could beat and embarrass Seth. Seth laughs it off, but then the swing is brought up again, and then he just explodes. He tells Graves to get out of the ring, and he gets right in Cesaro's face. He's like, you know what? No, let's not wait till Mania. Let's do it now. And he's getting angrier and angrier, and Cesaro just calmly looks at him and just says, take a swing. And then Rollins kind of stands down. There's a little bit of an awkward kind of moment, and then they go their separate ways. I'm going to give this one a C. Was it hokey? Absolutely. Cesaro said swing about 1,000 times and modified the lyrics to love is in the air to swing is in the air. But do I care? Look, not really. It might be a very childish backbone that we're basing this whole thing off. You know, like, oh, I don't want to be swung. You're embarrassing me. You're not as good a wrestler as I am. It's very, you know, paint by numbers stuff. But the match quality here, you can't deny, is tantalizing. Also, Seth snapping and losing his cool just shows how explosive he is and how explosive this match is going to be. It wasn't that bad, guys. There's a weird little bit here with Nia, Shayna and Reggie walking backstage. They bump into Carmella and Nia goes, oh, you didn't treat my guy very well at all, did you? And then they just walk off. And then next up we go to Shayna Baszler versus Natalya with Nia on commentary and Tamina at ringside. But just, oh my god, could you imagine the chain wrestling we are going to see out of these two? It's just gonna be, it's Shayna getting cradled and then they roll around each other's shoulders a couple of times and then Shayna eats the pin. Both teams fight, the Riot Squad then emerge and lay everybody out. Mandy and Dana then emerge, Naomi and Lana then emerge. Everybody's just sort of getting their stuff in. However, Natty and Tamina stand tall, and I'm going to give this whole thing a D. I get that we've really got to set this up, and I get that it showed us quite well the growing depth of the women's tag division, but Jesus, what was that tripe? It just did both Natty and Shayna dirty. I really wanted to see some interesting chain wrestling. Maybe one day. Maybe one day, folks. Next up we got Sami Zayn's premiere, and he welcomes us before he welcomes his guest, Logan Paul. Of course, the Thunderdome goes absolutely wild for Logan before Sami thanks him for taking a stand with him and, having his back and being on his side. Paul says he's excited to see the evidence. Sami welcomes him to WrestleMania as his guest, and he accepts, and then he starts to look a little bit nervous as the trailer rolls. And this trailer, let me just tell you, if you're going to watch one thing from SmackDown this week and you don't really want to watch SmackDown, watch this trailer. It's like the type of thing you'd watch on Amazon Prime at 2:30 in the morning. The really deep, dark end of Amazon Prime where you have all of those weird, UFO documentaries and, is the Kremlin covering up the fact that Putin is a reptilian? That sort of stuff. He says that he's seen people shredding paperwork backstage. He says he's grown to dislike zebras for some reason. The topic of flat earth is even broached twice. And Sami, just to make it even more perfect, it's like a student film made by 3 people. Sami is credited 3 times throughout the trailer, from the amazing mind of, executively produced by, directed by, just huge Sami Zayn every single time. All I'm going to say is this better be released in full because I need this. I need this in my life. I need it. So Sami asks Logan about his thoughts afterwards, and he's like, Kevin Owens approached me backstage and he said that you're a bit neurotic at the moment. And then Sami flies off the handle before realizing, maybe I shouldn't do that. He's got a huge social media following. He can probably hit me pretty hard as well. He says, look, I just don't want Kevin Owens poisoning you, man. I don't want you getting caught up in all of this insanity as well. And then Owens jumps him from behind, stunners him, shoves Logan and walks off. But before he shoves Logan and walks off, he's actually screaming at Sami, he's going to try and help him, obviously, but he's going to do it by beating him up. He's like, I'm going to keep doing this to you until you see how it is. I'm going to give this a B+. It was absolute madness. Sami was phenomenal in every aspect, right down to his dancing like a dad at a wedding. Logan Paul was actually pretty solid as far as celebrity guest spots go. He didn't look too deer in the headlights, and the moment he kind of did, it all made sense because Sami was getting more and more unhinged, and he was kind of just sort of staring at him like that. We then go to Pierce and Sonya backstage, and Edge approaches them and he runs Pierce down once again for setting up the triple threat match for Mania, and he's like, but I will be on commentary for the main event this evening. Kevin Owens has also stopped backstage and asked about what's just happened. He's like, I'm not going to stop until I can put some sense into Sami, and then Sami jumps in from behind, screaming at him, lays him out. Next up we got Carmella versus Bianca Belair, and before the match we've got Bianca being interviewed by the curtain. She's asked about her match against Sasha, and she says she's been waiting for a while for the real Sasha to show up, so now she's quite happy that the boss has finally arrived. There'll be no excuses when she defeats Sasha at Mania that way. So Carmella jumps Belair during her entrance. She gets up onto the apron and is shoved off, and then she just drives her into the ring steps. There's some back and forth in the ring, and then Carmella ties Belair's head to the bottom rope. So she just starts stomping a hole in Bianca, and then this proves to be the thing that makes her just power all the way up. She just absolutely turns the tables and starts laying it in. And it's not long after that we see the KOD for the win, and then Sasha jumps into the ring, kind of shoves Belair after the match as if she's going to attack her, but then Bianca's like, nope, and points at the WrestleMania sign, and it's sort of like, wait, don't do it yet, don't do anything this foolish. And Sasha kind of goes, all right, and then steps out of the ring herself. I'm going to give this one a C. It was a little bit of a weird one, super short, but it wasn't really a squash. Carmella didn't look like she was being steamrolled or anything. She capitalized on the situation, and it's good to see a more opportunistic side of her. It was, however, more setup, which, as I said, it's just the theme of the evening. Next up, we got a Baron Corbin backstage who hypes his appearances on Raw, you traitor. He says he's going to depose Drew, he's going to go on to Mania, he's going to defeat Lashley, and nobody will be able to doubt his position as king of WWE at that point. We then go to Apollo, who's also backstage, who hypes his own Mania chances. He challenges Big E to a Nigerian drum fight, and it essentially sounds like it's a no DQ fight. He says that it's called a drum fight because, the beating of your bones will sound like a drum, and it's just sort of like an unhinged brawl, no rules. So I'm guessing it's no DQ or a street fight, something to that level. But finally, we go to our main event of the evening, which is Daniel Bryan Bryan versus Jey Uso in a street fight with Edge at ringside on commentary. Heyman approaches Edge at the curtain and he says, I think we both feel the same way about Daniel Bryan muscling in and reducing your chances and reducing Roman's chances at retaining too. Edge kind of hangs on for a second as if he's going to side with him, but he's like, you know what, no, I have to be at commentary, and then he makes his entrance. Bryan makes his entrance after Jey sprints down to the ring, the pair start brawling, things spill to the outside right in front of Edge, and Edge is sat on Edge, no pun intended, just on this little chair, kind of staring holes in them all night. All night? All match, Sam. Jesus. Jey hurls Bryan back into the ring, grabs a chair from the timekeeper area. Bryan comes out for a dive and smack. Down he goes. He gets back into the ring with the chair, does Jey, locks it around Bryan's ankle and goes to dive on it from the top rope, only for Bryan to move out of the way. Bryan, now with the chair in his hand, delivers some retaliatory chair shots to Jey himself, and then Roman Reigns' music hits. Out he comes with Heyman and a little office wheelie chair. When we come back, Jey cuts Bryan off and sends him to a chair that's been propped up in the corner. He then goes to the outside, fetches a chain, wraps it round his fist and starts laying in the strikes to Bryan. He hits a splash, but Bryan kicks out. He sends him to the floor and then into the steps, and then he's going to suplex Bryan backwards onto the second part of the steps because he's taken them apart, but Bryan's able to go the other way. So right in front of Edge, we've got Daniel Bryan brandishing a chair, just smashing Jey Uso in after suplexing him backwards. So after that, we go missile drop kick, yes kicks, yes lock, Jey taps, Roman loses his mind, Edge is sat there going until it's kicked clean off his face by Bryan. Bryan just jumps Edge straight after the match, drags him to the ring post, and then just starts nailing his head against the post. He goes for Roman. Roman up the ramp, just hurls this off his chair. Bryan ducks it, locks Roman into the yes lock and starts screaming for him to tap. Just tap, tap, tap like that. And Roman is starting to struggle. He's biting the hand, anything he can, and then officials come out and break it all up. B+. What a match. What strong booking for Daniel Bryan here. If you needed any reason to solidify the fact that Daniel Bryan is an absolute machine, then this is it. Christ. Edge was good on commentary, really solidified his new mentality here, and Roman almost tapping just gave us a glimmer of what we could maybe be in store for come WrestleMania. It was a hell of a strong match, a hell of a strong post-match segment, but it's still going to be quite weird to see how an actual real crowd will react to these three men live, because, this has all been happening during the Thunderdome era, and they control how it sounds. But in terms of an overall grade for SmackDown this week, I think I'm going to give it a C+. Now, it wasn't a terrible show. It wasn't really too much of a middle-of-the-road show. It was just a lot of setup. The hype is necessary and it's been great, but it does kind of detract from the show itself when we've got situations such as that Shayna Natty match. But then I'm hyped for SmackDown next week, essentially being WrestleMania's pre-show, and then WrestleMania itself. You bet I am. It's going to be absolutely unreal. But there is something that I now need to address for you all at home, and I'm sure it's something that you're all already aware of. It's not something that we've done on a whim, but the SmackDown after WrestleMania will be the final episode of WWE SmackDown Graded. The reality of the situation is that YouTube has rendered both Graded and WTF financially unsustainable, and as a company, because that's what it is now. It's not just four of us sat in a little room anymore. We've got a lot of staff, and we really care about these staff, and we need to look out for them. Now, I know that some of you are really torn up about this. I've seen comments, I've seen tweets, but please understand that it's not something that we've taken lightly, and it hurts that people would maybe think that we have just done this, on a whim. Graded and WTF aren't going away permanently, though. There's still going to be post-pay-per-view episodes, and I can reveal that we are working on a very exciting new format for a review show that's going to be able to debut once we can all be back in the same room together. And I just want to close out by saying thanks to every single one of you, because Graded will always hold a bit of a special place in my heart. It was something that I wasn't ever really supposed to do, was I? I'm the guy off camera, and situation arose in which I needed to start doing this, and somehow, oh God, those early videos were rough. They were rough, I'm sorry, but somehow you guys stuck with me, and you're still with me now. This is a step I never thought I'd be able to take, and honestly now I'm doing things that I never thought I'd be able to do. So before I get emotional, I'd just like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you all from the bottom of all our hearts for supporting us. Coming up on 4 years this year, guys. 4 years. But I cannot wait for you all to see what we've got coming next.